comes to console gaming, one of the hallmarks of this generation of consoles is the rapid growth of downloadable content available after the initial purchase of a game. And while an excellent concept, DLC on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 have come in many different shades on the content quality spectrum. First, the good. The DLC that actually expands on the aftermath of the game with content created after the game's initial release. Some really good examples of this include games such as Rockstar Hits' Red Dead Redemption and Grand Theft Auto 4. Now, while I let my opinions of GTA 4 be known in a previous episode of this series, the game does manage to invariably get one aspect right, and that's the quality of its DLC. The Ballad of Gay Tony and the Lost in the Dam expansions offered arguably even more replayability and fun than the original on-disc storyline. With hours and hours of missions to play through, new characters to interact with, and brand new gameplay elements, these DLC expansions were as near perfection as one could have hoped for. Another good example of this type of DLC is Borderlands, a game which is very near and dear to my own heart. Seriously, if you haven't tried the game yet, you really ought to. And if you enjoy it, I highly recommend that you buy all the DLC available for it. Or at the very least, I suggest you get the General Knox and Claptrap Robot Revolution DLC. Anyway, while not of the same vein as the other games, another good model for DLC is the Constant DLC model, which has been offered by the Rock Band series for the last several years. The developers of Rock Band, Harmonix, have been expanding their catalog progressively on this weekly basis, and also have begun to offer a new service known as the Rock Band Network, which allows aspiring artists to create and sell charts of their music, thereby expanding the pool of music even further. The ability to export songs from earlier titles also adds a lot of value to the game by allowing you to compile all of your music onto a single disc. One final good use of DLC that strikes my mind is the downloading of full titles. Some indie games that otherwise would not have been able to gather much market attention have been able to prosper greatly due to their downloadability on the major consoles. And even regular on-disc titles have been popping up for download as well, making it easier and more efficient to own games by having them saved to your hard drive. I won't argue that the pricing of these games can sometimes be a bit more on the absurd side of things, but the idea is a good one. If Xbox or PS3 were to offer day-one downloads of AAA titles, it'd be a huge step towards removing the tedious drive to a local gaming store. But having addressed these solid uses of DLC capabilities, perhaps it's now time to move on to the less stellar examples of DLC, i.e., the bad. Allow me to start by getting the obvious one out of the way. Horse armor. Yeah, I don't know what the they were thinking when they made that one. But, moving on, another evil of the DLC world is undoubtedly the Project $10 policy which has been adopted by Electronic Arts. Basically, whenever you buy a used game, you're restricted from certain content, usually something like the ability to play online or some additional cosmetic DLC. I understand the logic behind why certain companies do this, and don't get me wrong, I'm also extremely sympathetic to the fact that they feel robbed by retailers, like GameStop and Blockbuster, who sell used games. I just think that overall, it's a highly ineffective way of dealing with the situation, and only serves to alienate potential buyers. I mean, it's certainly an annoyance to game publishers that they can't generate any sort of revenue off of used games, but rather than punish buyers of used games by making them purchase content that's already available on their disc, why not just make up your losses by supporting your game with a healthy stream of DLC that they'll then want to purchase regardless of where they obtained their original copy of the game? And besides, Project $10 is easily counterable by stores like GameStop. All they have to do is charge less than the worth of the DLC, and they've entirely neutralized any incentive to buy the new game because it's still a better deal. Unless, of course, you're like me and you just like the feeling of unwrapping a new game, but even that's simply a novelty without a real tangible value, and I can't imagine that too many people would pay extra for that experience. So, all in all, what I'm trying to say is that it's a rather feeble gambit to be trying this Project $10 thing. But even between things like horse armor and the marketing ploys of Project $10, these evils pale in comparison to the real ugliness exhibited by some DLC. The ugly can be found in the exploitation of DLC as a device to wrangle more money out of consumers. Several game producers have taken to restricting already finished content which ought to be available on disc, just for the purpose of offering day one DLC that they can charge more money for. Let me ask you guys this. Have you ever downloaded a character for a fighting game, or maybe some new levels for a puzzle game, and noticed that the download file size was in kilobytes, only taking half a second for the download to complete? Well, that's because you aren't actually downloading the character or those extra stages. They're actually already on your disc. The fact is that the game developer just placed a lock on it, preventing you from using features that you already paid for. So, what you're really downloading is just a little tiny bit of game coding needed to unlock it. I'm really disgusted by this type of nickel and diming, and do my best to avoid purchasing games that follow this formula. Unfortunately, though, it happens in more instances than one would think. Seriously, game developers, if the content in question is ready to be put on the disc, or even worse, if it's already on the disc, it's completely unethical to lock gamers out of ownership over it. It'd be the equivalent of buying a 6-pack of soda and being told there's a padlock on the last can, and that you can only get the key to the padlock if you pay the manufacturer an additional fee on top of your purchase. Alright, on second thought, don't ask me how you get a padlock onto a can of soda. I didn't think that analogy through that well. But the point I'm trying to make is that this trend should not continue, and the practice of withholding already finished content should be abandoned. Anyway, that about sums up my feelings towards DLC. Taken in the right way, I see it as a true evolution of gaming by turning the on-disc content into a platform in and of itself, supported by a steady stream of new additions to maximize replayability after sale. But taken in the wrong way, and believe me, a lot of developers are taking it in a bad direction, DLC can clearly be seen as an obscene gouging of the wallets of gamers by money-hungry corporations. But now that you've heard me talk, I'd like to hear your thoughts as well. If you'd like, feel free to post a reply in the comments below. What games do you think have good DLC support, and which ones do you think have bad support? What is your opinion on the current DLC market and the potential future for that market? In any case, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you'd like, you can also visit my channel for plenty more video gaming related content. So, until next time, this has been Jesus Quesadilla, signing out and riding off into the sunset.